Hello. Okay. Good afternoon, Tanajan. I have two questions. The first is I would like to understand more about the practical experience of chitta. Is so in meditation, where there are moments or periods where the mind is not clinging to greed, hatred, delusion. Is that chitta? Or yeah. So maybe just to understand a bit more. The second question is sometimes during meditation, I experience quite a lot of involuntary spasms. It's not just, today and yesterday, but also in some of my prior experience. So usually I just observe it and I let it happen. It's usually not very like big or large, but I wonder if, should I just continue to observe it or, how should I look at it? Thank you very much.
So the first question, the citta is the aspect of the mental world which is the fundamental knowing quality. So when liberation is realized, what is liberated is the citta. So that's in the languaging of the suttas. That's the part of the mind that the aspect of mind that can be liberated. So when greed, hatred, and delusion are not present, then the nature of the citta is recognized free of obscuration or distortion, and that has qualities. In the Thai language, it is very beautifully described as sawang, sa'at, sangok, radiant, pure, and peaceful. And so those are both Lumpur Cha and Lumpur Buddhadasa and other forest ajahns would use that as a kind of stock phrase, sawang, sa'at, sangok. These are the qualities of the citta when it's free of greed, hatred, and delusion. And so that, and if the experience, if the mind is quiet, and it seems as though greed, hatred, and delusion are not there, but there isn't much. It's not very small, or it feels very limited. Then that's a sign that there's still some attachment, still some grasping going on that we're not aware of. So it's a kind of way of recognizing the heart free of obstruction, free of limitation. So purity, radiance, peacefulness. And so that I'm not an Abhidhamma scholar, so that there's probably all kinds of standard definitions of citta, but in terms of forest tradition description, then that's, I think, most practical and helpful. As for involuntary movements, that's kind of not uncommon, quite common in meditation, and I had that for a number of years, and it's usually just the body's energy system being a bit out of balance, and the more that the mind can relax with that and not make anything out of it, not build a whole story around it, but just no big thing. The more relaxed and easeful the attitude is, then the more you're creating the causes for balance in the system, and helps those things to fade away. It's my experience of it. So please, yes.
Good afternoon, Tanajan. I have question, but I want to share my experience. Like I was in pain like few years back, and I couldn't sit meditate. And then one day I decided I want to know what's happened inside my body. Like I have that pain, and then I sit. I find out like it's like a little like a circle inside my body. Then I go deep. I want to see like what happened, what's going on. And I saw it's like the circle is getting smaller, smaller, and smaller. And then suddenly it's gone. And once it's gone, then I saw it like actually it's inside my body. It's like nothing, like empty. And then yesterday, uh, when you explained to me about the true nature, it's like waking me up, like making me up, like about my meditation experience. And then so I realized like uh, actually like all the suffers, all sadness and happiness, like that I hold on to it. It's like actually it's nothing. Like I waste my time. And then so now my question is, um, with this realization that I have like, so what should I do in order to experience since I'm still alive, Ajahn, experiencing this life?
Well, if I understand what you're asking, well, just don't create anything around that. Just let your life take shape with that understanding there in the background. So when you have choices to make, when you have uh, conversations that you're having, the say challenges in the work field or in the family, just let that understanding inform the way you relate to your family members, to people in the workplace, people on the street, and people in society. So we don't have to have a spelled out plan. Oh, now I have had this insight, I am going to do X, Y, Z, and I'm never going to do ABC again. It's far more helpful, I would say, to let things evolve organically, just to let things take shape, because you don't know what possibilities are going to come into your life, or what uh, what say the what there's going to be in the world that you might be able to do or to stop doing. And so rather than making a fixed plan, just let things evolve, and then allow the choices to be guided by mindfulness and wisdom along the way. And you'll be ready to be surprised. Because sometimes when the we let go of our sort of habitual way of seeing things or doing things, well, I always do that. I've been that way my whole life. And then suddenly, oh, well, that's not interesting anymore. And that, so let yourself be surprised by, well, I used to spend a lot of time doing X, Y, Z, but now, why do I want to do that? Oh, look at that. So just letting things change on their own, rather than, well, the new me is going to be, I'm going to make a list of the way the new me is going to be. That's probably deadly. And just to let things evolve, let yourself be surprised, and just and not to feel you have to have a lot of definition. That in the modern society, we and in the education systems and in the working world, people want to plan. You have to have a program, and have things spelled out of the direction you want to go, and how you're going to go about it. And with in the spiritual dimension, it's far better to have, if you have a plan, have it in pencil rather than ink, so you can easily erase it and let it change. And so that would be my advice, and to uh, give yourself some space for the world to reshape itself a bit. Maybe the last thing is also, if you're not meeting other people's expectations, or you used to be like this and you were always interested in that, and what's happened to you? And just to not, and I've learned a huge amount from this myself, not to try and live your life according to other people's, trying to fulfill other people's expectations of you. You make your own choices, but I spend a huge amount of energy in my life trying to meet other people's expectations of what I should be and how I should be, and And then in your effort to try and fulfill what you think other people want you to be, you can get really off balance. And so, just as an example, so I spent the first 10 years of my life in the Sangha trying to be the perfect monk, trying to do everything kind of 100%, 110% right. So I was, with the meditation, I would always be getting there early and staying on later. I would sit for longer than other people. With the ascetic practices, I would do more than anybody else, or I would more strict with the Dhutanga practices or the Vinaya discipline. Yeah, I didn't lie down for 3.5 years, just to kind of trying to do it all perfectly, and so after about 10 years of that, I realized I'm kind of clogged up with all this renunciation, which is a contradiction in terms. Like, all these things I'm supposed to be relinquishing is actually stuff I'm carrying around. And I felt like I was like an overstuffed goose, kind of. And so that I decided to drop all of those things I thought I was supposed to be the perfect monk. And I just made it my project to be ordinary, and to basically not have a project, to just give up all of those special practices, just fit in and do what needed to be done with the monastery routine. And a little while later, after I quite consciously changed the way I did things. Like I had an open door policy. Anyone could come and visit me and ask for advice anytime in the monks' vihara. And so I changed that. I got a delighting in solitude notice for my door that I would hang up on my door from time to time. Delighting, rather than please come in, I am delighting in solitude. Like, come back some other time. So anyway, a year or two into that change of mode, one of the other senior monks said, not trying to be rude, but in a way it was a friendly comment. He said, "You're much easier to live with since you stopped trying to be perfect." So just being respectful of other people, but not feeling you have to fulfill what they think of you, and that to give yourself that space, and also to give other people that space too. Just let things be a bit different. The world will adapt. But please, any other questions, thoughts, reflections? You all survived the great rain, and no one got struck by lightning, I hope. Yes, young no.
Thank you, Phra Ajahn. I happen to read your other remarkable Dhamma book on Frank Sinatra's My Way, composed by Paul Anka, or The Middle Way, composed by the Lord Buddha. But when I get to this important part, which gives me a goosebump, you talked about yourself when you were a young lad, and it happened in Hempstead. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that you lived around this area. And I just wonder if Luang Pu Sha's monastery's lineage has been established at that time of your age. And how come that everything won't be a coincidence like the Dhamma talk, but it happens to be. Would you please explain how did it happen that you finally comes to Amaravati?
Yeah, it's very interesting for a couple of reasons. So I had never been to Hemel Hempstead before that incident I describe in the book. I was a student at London University, and a friend of mine who was also a student in the psychology department we shared a flat together in Primrose Hill. The last few months I was in London, and his former girlfriend, they were still very good friends. She was at drama school in London's Central School of Speech and Drama. So we were all reaching about 21 at that time. And so this friend of mine that I shared the flat with was called Patrick Field. And he and his ex-partner, Julia, had grown up in Hemel Hempstead. And Patrick, so he often referred to Hemel Hempstead in terms of his childhood and growing up and working in the Ovaltine factory on the holidays and so on. But I'd never been there. So the reason I was there was because Julia had her 21st birthday party at her parents' home in Hemel. And so I went along. I knew her. She was a good friend of mine too. So that was what took me to Hemel Hempstead. To that, I guess it's an incident where I drank a pint of Teacher's Highland Cream whiskey, and wasn't drunk. So that I had a serious change of heart that evening. So that was why I was in Hemel Hempstead, the first time I'd ever been there, and it was to go to Julia's birthday party. And even though she was an actress, she was at drama school, and actors have a reputation for being quite party goers, kind of party animals. She and her friends they didn't use drugs or alcohol. They liked music and dancing and theatre, but they were all quite sober. So they were kind of what they call a sort of straight edge group of actors and drama students. So that was why there was a lot of spirits that were sitting there on a table. No one else was drinking it. So I thought, well, I can't just let that sit there. So I adopted that bottle of Teacher's and drank it through the course of that evening. So that's what took me to Hemel, and I had that. It was even though I was a bit woozy, a pint of whiskey is quite a lot, but I wasn't drunk. I hadn't got to that place where everything is good. It was still a very strong sense of me, and that as I think it says in the book, I drank a pint of whiskey, and I was still not in that happy place. And I realized this is a waste. The thought I had at the time was, this is a waste of good scotch. I'm not, I've drunk a pint of whiskey and I'm still here. And I had this intuition, I can't drink enough to get to that place anymore. The medicine doesn't work. I'm habituated to the medicine. I can't drink my way to that happy place, even for a short time. So then my 21st birthday present to myself a few weeks later was to stop drinking. That was the other part that's really interesting that Luang Por Sumedho was telling me just about a month ago when I was chatting with him, was that the very first Dhamma talk he gave in England was in Hemel Hempstead. So those of you who have never been, Hemel Hempstead is like Ubon. It's kind of charmless. No one goes to Hemel for a holiday. You don't go there for the beautiful buildings or the kind of the glorious history. It's a new town, lots of concrete. It won the prize for the ugliest town in Britain 6-7 years ago. Even got a photograph of the shopping precinct in the paper. So it's like Ubon. You love it if you grew up there, but if you didn't, you wouldn't go there for a holiday or for a thrill. So Hemel Hempstead is a kind of very unappealing place in people's minds, and that very unspecial, very ordinary, unglamorous. But weirdly, not only did Amaravati end up being just 5 or 6 miles outside of Hemel Hempstead, but when Luang Por Sumedho first came to England with Ajahn Chah in 1977, then one of the members of the Buddhist group in London was a woman called Frida Wint, and she was an academic from Oxford University, And so she was involved in educational field, and she was responsible for providing Buddhist teaching materials, or if people wanted a Buddhist representative to go and give a talk in a school, then Frida Wint, in the mid-1970s, Frida Wint was the kind of go-to person. It was a very small presence in Britain at that time, and so looking for Buddhist resources, then Frida's name was the person to go to. And right at that time, she had a school in Hemel Hempstead that wanted a Buddhist teacher to go along and give a talk. And so early in that stay, she said to Ajahn Sumedho, "Oh, there's a school in Hemel Hempstead that would like a monk to come along and give a talk. Would you go?" And so that was the first Dhamma talk he gave in England, was at that school in Hemel Hempstead. So it's a strange, weird karmic connection, because it really is not a very, those of you who've been there, will know Hemel is, if you were born there, you love it, like Ubon, but it's not very appealing, but it's got this strange spiritual karmic associations. And so when people say, well, where is Amaravati? You say, oh, it's just outside of Hemel Hempstead. They go, almost always people go, really? That it's a strange association to have. When I was with Lumpur Sumedho in the National Museum in Cairo, and it's a very, very nicely made museum in Egypt. And it's very beautifully arranged, and with very kind of moody lighting. So we're in this particular room in the National Museum, and there are these kind of mummy cases and all these ancient artifacts and sculptures around the room, and it's just slightly spooky lighting. And so we're in there. I was there with Lumpur Sumedho, Ajahn Yanarato, Ajahn Vimalo, who is an amateur Egyptologist, and Richard Smith, and Edward Lewis and Yom Eve. So we were all there in the museum, and we're obviously we're in our robes, and we look like we stepped out of one of the pictures, and so this woman came into another visitor to the museum came into this room, and she saw the three of us monks there. She said, oh my goodness! And she said, "Excuse me, where are you from?" And I couldn't resist. I said, "Hemel Hempstead." She was very surprised. If we said we've emanated from the tombs of Luxor, she would have been less surprised, I think. So that's a few background stories there.
You present another curiosity. I just want to know, how could you manage to organize such a grand event of mudita for Lumpur Sumedho to accommodate hundreds of Brahmahatera and thousands of the lay people? Thank you, Buddha.
With a lot of metta, karuna, mudita, and upekkha. We have a very good team. We did a lot of planning, and people were very generous with their time, their energy, their ingenuity in the Sangha and amongst the lay people. We had been given 2 houses across the road about 3 or 4 years ago. So we had a big house. So all of the Wat Pah Pong Ajahns stayed in this big house called Heartwood. And then the women Upataks who came along with them, they stayed in a little bungalow next door. Another interesting coincidence was that the gentleman who bought those houses and donated them to us, he was going to buy a house for himself on St. Margaret's Lane called Honeybrook. And he said, I'm not going to use it for the next 5 years. I want to buy this place, and I'll let the monastery make use of it up until I want to move in. So we thought, oh, great, very, very useful. We've got this big event coming up next year that'll be handy. Then about a month before they were supposed to sign the papers, he backed out And he said, I'm terribly sorry. I've changed my mind. I've got too many properties already. I hope it's not inconvenient, but I'm not going to be buying Honeybrook after all. So, okay, no problem. A month later, or maybe 6 weeks, I got an email from someone saying, hi, my name is Megan Tang. I live in Hong Kong. We've just bought Honeybrook. Would you be, we're not going to move in for a couple of years. Would you be able to use it? She didn't know that the previous person had made this a very similar offer. Very spooky. So anyway, so Megan said we were happy to use Honeybrook as a sprawling bungalow, just a little bit down the road. So all of the monks and novices who are usually resident at Amaravati, they moved out of the monks' vihara. They all moved down to Honeybrook or camped out in the forest. So about 25 or 30 monks and novices in this place. Then the visiting Ajahn, Western Ajahns all stayed in the monks' vihara. So we had about 130 monks and novices staying, and 22 nuns and anagarikars staying. So about 160, 150, 160 monastics staying for the whole time. We had very few lay people staying, but they were told, find a B&B or a hotel or friends nearby. And so a few were staying there, but a lot were coming in daily. And about 1,500 people came on the Sunday, about 800 on the Saturday. So yeah, it was a lot of goodwill, a lot of good planning. So we thought it all through and worked out how it's going to work and who's going to do what beforehand. And we didn't do any hoping for the best. That's not usually helpful. So anyway, so any questions? I could go on, but it was one of the and the weather gods they didn't drop an ocean of rain on us. It was beautiful weather the whole weekend, so it's very appreciative of that. A question for Ajahn Jiew, maybe. I'm doing all the talking as usual.
Hello. So as Luang Pa's request, I have a question for Ajahn Jiew. I think maybe a couple of days ago, you touched upon the Satipatthana in one of the Q&As. I think, I'm not sure. I was wondering if you could maybe give more details or elaborate a bit more on each of the aspects of the Satipatthana.
อาตมาคิดว่าสิบฐานสีก็คือตัวหลักกว้างๆที่ไม่ว่าเราจะปฏิบัติในสำนักไหนมันก็สามารถจะจัดเข้ามาอยู่ในหมวดของการเจริญสติอยู่บนฐานทั้งสี่ซึ่งประกอบด้วยอันแรกสุดคือกายอันที่สองก็คือเวทนาความรู้สึกแล้วก็จิตคุณลักษณะที่มันเกิดขึ้นในจิตของเราแล้วก็สุดท้ายก็เป็นเรื่องของธรรมกายเวทนาจิตธรรมก็ขึ้นอยู่ว่าแต่ละสำนักจะเน้นตรงไหนเป็นพิเศษอย่างเช่นถ้าเป็นทางสายวัดป่าเราก็คงจะสังเกตได้ว่าเราก็ให้ความสำคัญกับเรื่องของการมีสติอยู่ที่กายอย่างลมหายใจก็ถือว่าเป็นกายเพราะเนื่องอยู่ด้วยกายเดินจงกรมก็ชัดเจนจะมาสัมผัสเท้าที่สัมผัสแต่ละก้าวแล้วตัวสิปฐานก็ยังสามารถที่จะครอบคลุมไปถึงการพิจารณากายให้เป็นของไม่สวยไม่งามก็อยู่ในหมวดนี้ด้วยแล้วทีนี้หลวงพ่อชาก็ส่วนใหญ่ก็อีกอันหนึ่งที่หลวงพ่อชาใช้ก็คือตัวธรรมพิจารณาเรื่องไม่แน่อนิจจังนี่ก็เป็นธรรมที่พิจารณาแต่ถ้าเป็นอย่างเช่นยกอย่างเช่นว่าสายของทางโคเอนก้าก็จะ เน้นเรื่องของเวทนาsensation ที่เกิดขึ้นตามร่างกายและความรู้สึกนะก็แล้วก็ก็มีสายที่เขาดูจิตนะดูความคิดนี่ก็เป็นเน้นที่ตัวนั้นแต่ท้ายสุดแล้วอาตมามันก็จะไปเชื่อมโยงกันที่ตัวธรรมพิจารณาธรรมเห็นน้อมให้มาเป็นอนิจจังทุกขังอนัตตาก็เป็นไตรลักษณ์อันนี้ก็เป็นวิธีการในการปฏิบัติในเรื่องของสติก็เป็นที่ตั้งของสติก็อยู่ถ้าจะเอาจริงๆก็อยู่ในหมวดสัมมาสติคือเรามีอริยมรรคเป็นองค์แปดเนี่ยเป็นเหมือนเครื่องมือในการปฏิบัติใช่ไหมแล้วก็สัมมาสติก็เป็นหนึ่งในนั้น
ครับนมัสการค่ะเมื่อตอนต้นรีทรีตนะคะอาจารย์จิ๋วถามว่าสอนว่าให้หายใจลึกกว่าปกติ แล้วก็สติตั้งไว้ที่ปลายลมอย่างเงี้ยค่ะแล้วหมายถึงว่าก็คือเราควรที่จะณตอนนั้นก็คือมันไม่มีลมแล้วใช่ไหมคะแล้วก็หมายถึงว่าก็คือเจาะสติตรงนั้นเลยใช่ไหมคะก็คือเป็นฐานตรงนั้นหรือเปล่าคะ
อาตมาคิดว่าไม่น่าจะใช่นะเพราะว่าเวลาที่อธิบายถึงเรื่องถ้ามีสติอยู่กับลมหายใจก็น่าจะยังหมายถึงตัวการกำหนดอยู่เพราะถ้าสมมุติว่าที่รู้สึกว่ามันเหมือนลมหายไปแต่ส่วนใหญ่อาตมาไม่ค่อยใช้ชื่อว่าไม่มีลมแต่ส่วนใหญ่จะเป็นเรื่องของมันสติมันละเอียดจนกระทั่งเหมือนไม่มีลมหายใจมันหายไปจากการรับรู้แต่จริงๆมันก็ยังมีอยู่ อันนั้นน่าจะเป็นในส่วนของที่เป็นอาการของสมาธิที่เกิดขึ้นแล้ว แต่ที่อธิบายถึงเรื่องการกำหนดก็น่าจะเป็นตรงนั้นมากกว่าแต่อาตมาจำไม่ได้ว่าอาตมาสอนให้กำหนดลมหายใจยาวเพียงแต่ว่าอาจจะไปพูดถึงเรื่องการผ่อนคลายมากกว่าที่ว่าอย่างเช่นหายใจเข้าแล้วก็หายใจออกให้ยาวกว่ากำหนดให้ยาวกว่าหายใจเข้านิดนึงก็รู้สึกมันจะได้ผ่อนคลายไม่เน้นอยู่ตรงนั้น แต่ถ้าเรื่องกำหนดไอ้ช่วงของการลมหายใจคิดว่าหลวงพ่อชาเคยสอนคือปกติหลวงพ่อชาไม่ค่อยจะมี guided meditation เดี๋ยวต้องถามท่านอาจารย์ว่าสมัยท่านอาจารย์อยู่เนี่ยทันไหมแต่มีเทศบางกันนะนะคือ guided meditation เนี่ยจะมาสมัยบวชใหม่ๆนี่ไม่เคยฟังเลยนะอ่าได้มาฟัง guided meditation หลังๆเมื่อได้มีโอกาสเข้า retreat กับครูบาอาจารย์ที่มาจากทางตะวันตก นะแล้วก็หลวงพ่อสุเมโธก็เหมือนบอกว่าท่านสอนอย่างนี้เป็นครั้งแรกตอนที่ท่านได้อ่าอ่ารู้สึกจะมีทางสายโกเอนกาที่ทางที่อังกฤษแล้วท่านเห็นแนวทางท่านก็เลยมาทำแล้วสมัยก่อนเนี่ยครูบาอาจารย์ก็ให้เรานั่งเลยแล้วถ้ามีปัญหาอะไรก็คุยกับท่านนะถามอย่างนั้นมากกว่าแต่ว่าเรื่องที่พูดนำให้เราเห็นภาพว่าการนั่งทำอย่างไรเนี่ยไม่ค่อยมี แต่มีเทศกันหนึ่งของหลวงพ่อชาที่ท่านสอนโยแล้วมันคล้ายกับ guided meditation นะคือท่านบอกว่าให้กำหนดลมว่ามันมีต้นกลางปลายก็คือว่าเวลาเราหายใจเข้าเนี่ยมันจะต้องมีจุดเริ่มต้นตรงใดตรงหนึ่งอันนี้ก็เป็นการกำหนดนะแล้วระหว่างกลางเราก็มีสิ้นสุดลมหายใจเข้าแล้วถ้าเราไปสังเกตโดยธรรมชาติของการหายใจคนปกติ พอหายใจเข้าไปแล้วเนี่ยมันจะหยุดนิดหนึ่งนะเข้าไหมแล้วเราก็จะเริ่มหายใจออกไอ้ตอนหยุดนิดหนึ่งคือปลายของลมหายใจเข้าใช่ไหมแล้วก็อีกนิดหนึ่งก็คือต้นของลมหายใจออกก็คือกำหนดตรงนั้นแล้วก็กลางแล้วก็ไปจนถึงที่สุดก็เป็นปลายหลวงพ่อชาก็สอนอย่างนี้ให้กำหนดต้นกลางปลายนะในความเห็นอาตมาก็คือเพื่อกำหนดให้มันถี่ขึ้น คือปกติเนี่ยทางสายวัดป่าเราจะเป็นพุทโธหายใจเข้าพุทหายใจออกโธอ่าตอนที่เราพุทเนี่ยมันไม่ค่อยมีอะไรหรอกใช่ไหมนะโธก็ไม่มีอะไรแต่มันมักจะมีความคิดมันหลุดไประหว่างพุทกับโธคือพุทแล้วมันหายไปแล้วมันไปคิดเรื่องอื่นแล้วโธไม่กลับมานะหรือระหว่างโธไปแล้วยังไม่ทันจะพุทมันก็เผลอคิดไปเรื่องอื่นนะวิธีที่หลวงพ่อชาสอนก็คล้ายๆกับว่าทำให้กำหนดให้มันถี่ขึ้น แทนที่จะเป็นพุทโธก็กลายเป็นพุทพุทพุท แล้วก็โทโทโทอ่าด้วยความเข้าใจอันนี้พออ่าคุณครูที่โรงเรียนพันบริดจ์มาที่วัดอาตมาแล้วก็เล่าให้ฟังว่าเวลาสอนเด็กที่อังกฤษเด็กมัธยมเนี่ยเขาใช้เทคนิคนับอ่า7-11แล้วมาก็เข้าใจว่าอ๋อมันก็คือพุทโทโทโทโทโทโทโทไงคือมันเป็นเครื่องมือเฉยๆในการกำหนด แล้วอาตมาคิดว่าให้แต่ละคนลองสังเกตลมหายใจของตัวเองว่าเราหายใจแบบไหนสบายคือถ้าบังคับไปเนี่ยเราจะอึดอัดหลายท่านแบบพอตั้งใจกำหนดลมหายใจมันจะอึดอัดเราต้องหาจังหวะให้หายใจสบายๆแบบเป็นธรรมชาติแต่ขณะเดียวกันเนี่ยคงไอ้ความรู้สึกตัวนี้ไว้แล้วสักพักหนึ่งเราจับได้ว่าเราจะหายใจแค่ไหนเท่าไหนจะรู้สึกสบายสำหรับเรา คือถ้าไปบังคับให้ยาวไปมันก็เหนื่อย แต่อ่ามันก็มีข้อสังเกตอันหนึ่งที่อาจจะให้เราเป็นการศึกษาเพิ่มได้ขึ้นว่าลมหายใจเนี่ยสัมพันธ์กับอารมณ์ข้างในคือถ้าช่วงไหนเนี่ยเรามีความสงบลมหายใจก็มักจะสงบด้วยแล้วถ้าช่วงไหนที่เราคิดหรือว่ามีอารมณ์โดยเฉพาะอย่างยิ่งที่ชัดมากคือโกรธมีโทสะเนี่ยลมหายใจของเราจะถี่ขึ้น มันจะมีอาการเกร็งตอบสนองของร่างกายบางอย่างแล้วอาตมาพบว่าถ้าเราไปจัดการกับเรื่องอารมณ์ซึ่งเป็นเรื่องนามธรรมเนี่ยจัดการยากบางอย่างเราจัดการที่กายก่อนง่ายเช่นว่าพอเรารู้ตัวว่าเราหายใจถี่แล้วก็พยายามยืดพยายามให้หายใจให้ลึกขึ้นยาวขึ้นพยายามผ่อนคลายร่างกายซึ่งทำได้ง่ายกว่าเราก็พบว่าอ้าวไออารมณ์โกรธเมื่อกี้มันเบาลงอาจจะยังไม่หายสนิทนะแต่มันเบาลง คือเป็นจัดการคือพอเราเห็นความสัมพันธ์ของกายอ่ากับจิตลมหายใจกับอารมณ์ของเราเนี่ยมันก็เป็นเครื่องมืออย่างหนึ่งที่เรามาใช้ได้
What is the 7-Eleven you keep mentioning?
You see that there's a teacher. I think his name is Richard. He's he's a house of the Tunbridge School, and he came through the connection of Ajahn Vichit at Tosi School. He ordained with one of his students who's Thai. So he interested in meditation practice and spent some time at my monastery. He told me that he has a project at his school, and then students seem to find it very useful. He called the project dot B.
Yeah,
that means full
I've
stop.
heard of dot B.
Dot B. And then the technique that he used for teaching meditation for his student is that counting the number of the breath using the numbers 7 and 11. This is just from him. So I mentioned that, and also he used this the sensation, and then let student observe the feeling on the hand, and the way that bring the mind back to the present moment.
I was curious about the 7-Eleven. So please, any more questions? Yes.
Follow to our friend's question. Actually, I am the beginner, so I prefer to listen the meditation guide. Once Ajahn said, what Ajahn guiding and kind of my mind use the reference point as the voice that the Ajahn keep talking. Once Ajahn stop talking, I feel very difficult to follow my breath, or sometimes I use the reference mark like the sound outside, like the aircon sound, the bird sounds or something like that. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but feel really difficult without the meditation guide.
It's interesting that you say that. One of the it's also the 40th anniversary of Amaravati, and they were making interviews with people who've been around from the early days. And one of the laymen who's is the main accountant for the Kamakan, the steward organization. He was describing his first meditation class with Ajahn Sujito, and his feeling was, why won't he shut up? He keeps talking. Why is there so much to say? We just shut up. He gives a little account of his arom during that meditation class. So it's kind of interesting that you have the opposite experience. Of, oh, I wish he would keep talking. So we are all different. It was very funny. Yeah. So that so the as I said a few times, I encourage people to experiment and to find things that work for you, because we're all different. And so that if listening to the sounds of the birds or the crickets or the aircon or the rain on the roof, that helps to sustain a quality of attention, then that's useful. With another aspect of meditation that because there's quite a lot of ambient sound here, I was wondering whether to mention it, but there's a whole practice called inner listening, where if you pay attention to your hearing, that if you listen closely, in the background there's a continuous high-pitched inner tone. It sounds rather like the speakers of the audio system or the purring of a machine, but it's whether there's noise outside or silence, it goes on internally. So you can use that inner sound. It's called nada in Sanskrit. You can use that inner sound as a meditation object, and so that it's not so much of a classical Theravada practice. But it's Luang Por Sumedho developed it when he was in the West, when it's much quieter, no crickets, and much quieter environment in many ways, away from the forest. And so I found that also extremely helpful. And so that particularly if the breath is hard to follow, and it's a bit, also when the mind gets quiet, the breath can slow right down a lot. But the inner sound is continuous. You never hear it start or stop. It's always there. So it's like the force of gravity. We don't feel gravity beginning and ending. It's ever present. So the inner sound, similarly, if you turn your attention to it, it's there. So that's a very useful, skillful means. It's a little harder in Thailand with so many crickets and the sounds of the forest and the aircon and so on. But it's a very valuable tool. So most meditation retreats, I will give guidance about that. And there's a little book of that I wrote on it called Inner Listening. But you can find through the website. I don't think I brought any copies here. But that's if hearing is a particular, say, effective doorway for you, then great. That's something that you can use.
มัสการค่ะพระอาจารย์ I have questions regarding doing the awareness during the routine or during the day, like brushing the teeth or doing the dishes. Some of the experience that I have is that you have the awareness while you brush your teeth. You grab the toothbrush, put the toothpaste on, and you continue to brush your teeth. And then one moment I experienced is that while I'm washing myself in the mirror, I felt a detachment from who I am. Like I'm washing my hands moving, and it kept moving like that, like an autopilot, without me organizing it. And at the same time, my mind was also have the thinking of watching my hands moving. So I feel some kind of detachment of the hand. Maybe it's not my hand, but actually I know that obviously it's my hand. It's like a little haunting, a little bit. It's like being in a horror movie. Sometimes I just wondering if I was temporarily or periodically hallucinated. Like
No, I'd say that's the hallucination has stopped. Seriously.
yeah.
So it's also a meditation practice that you can do, and it works best if it's not bright light, but just look at your face in a mirror, and just let your vision relax and look at your face. And it doesn't take, for most people, it doesn't take long before your face, you're not hallucinating, but that face becomes very, very strange. Because what becomes clear, because normally we're looking at our face in the mirror to kind of brush our teeth or fix our hair or something, but just to stop and just look, because what's really apparent is that which knows the face doesn't have a face. It's not a person, doesn't belong to a person. And so I first experienced that strongly when I was a student in London, and it was a very weird experience. So he says, is it like a horror movie? At that time, I had no knowledge of Buddhism and had no context. So it was very, very freaky because I wasn't hallucinating, but that face in the mirror had absolutely nothing to do with me. It was my face, just as you're kind of identically the way you're describing. It's that face, but this which is knowing the face has got absolutely no connection with that. So that was very freaky. So I thought, I guess this is what they call an identity crisis. And I was studying psychology at the time, but it was very unsettling because if that's not me, what am I? And there was just I had no nothing to put there. Because it was really clear, that's not what I am. That's not me, but it's my face. So, but I didn't know if that's not me, then what am I? And there was just a big blank. So that was very freaky. But being English, I thought, don't panic. Don't panic. So just put the kettle on. It's a very English thing to do, make a cup of tea. If everything is falling apart, put the kettle on. It's the standard response to dukkha. So, put the kettle on. And so I worked through it. I just sort of, I was a student, so I just lived my life in sort of short increments. Like, okay, get to the tube station, get on the train, get to the lecture theatre. Okay, take your notes. And just, but it was very unsettling, and felt very groundless, and a sense like I was a kind of fake person. That I was kind of walking around, sort of dressed up as a human, but that wasn't really what I was. And it lasted for about 6 weeks. But I used that, but it was interesting because I had this thought, well, maybe I should go to the college, the medical people, and just let them know I'm having this weird experience. And then, but there was that strong intuition that said, don't panic. You are not crazy. If you seek psychiatric help, you will define yourself as a psychiatric case. That's not what's happening. And I didn't know why I trusted that, but I did. So I didn't go to the medical people and just let things adjust on their own. And so just living life bit by bit by bit, just getting to the next thing. And then it eased off. And then about 6 weeks later, but I'm back. That was my face again. But many years later, well, actually not that many, about 4 or 5 years later when I was a monk, and I was living for the retreat season with one novice in a little retreat place in Devon, southwest England. And I was by myself a lot of the time, and the novice was away for the day, and the family were off. So I was by myself in his caravan in the farmyard, and I had the same kind of experience. Like, who am I when I'm all alone? There's nothing to do and no one to talk to, and by myself in this caravan. And then that same kind of I-ness fell away. You know, my body was still here, but it was exactly that same kind of feeling. But then having the context of Buddhist teachings, then it was joyful. Like, oh, right. Yes, this is good. Rather than a freak out, because I'd never heard of the teachings on not self, or I had very, very vague ideas about spirituality when I was, a young college student. So that I would say, but when I said the hallucination has stopped rather than you were hallucinating, I say that's the case. And I think a day or two ago I was saying in the guided meditation, this which knows the person isn't a person. This quality of awareness, it's not female or male, or it doesn't have a gender or an age or a shape or a location, it doesn't have a language. And so that awareness it knows the body, it knows the personality, it knows our life story, but it's not identified with that. And in those moments of where you get these sort of unbidden experiences, then that's revealed. Oh, this which knows my life isn't me. Oh, in a way, it's more you than the personality and the name and the body and the story. It's more who and what we are. But I feel that the Buddha's teaching is brilliantly crafted to help us appreciate that and still to carry on. So, like the Buddha himself, he used the word Tathagata in a way that he seems to have coined that word. He invented that word, it seems, and it means both thus come and thus gone. So scholars have been debating for centuries and centuries: is it tat agata, come to suchness, or is it tata gata, gone to suchness? Is that awake, aware principle totally here or totally transcendent? Is it absolutely present or totally beyond? And the Buddha was very fond of word plays, and I think he created the word deliberately to represent both that totally present and totally transcendent, so that the Buddha's wisdom, his awareness, was not identified with the body, with the five khandhas. In that one dialogue with Vacchagotta, he says that material form or feeling or perception, mental formations or consciousness, whereby someone trying to describe the Tathagata would describe him, that has been completely let go of, cut off at the root, made like a palm tree stump, deprived of the conditions for existence, and been rendered incapable of arising in the future. So there's no attachment to the five khandhas, but he's sitting there talking to this wanderer, Vacchagotta, but the Tathagata is sitting here face to face with you. So there's no attachment to the five khandhas, but and then he goes on to say the Tathagata is profound, immeasurable, unfathomable, like the great ocean. So there's a quality of presence, of reality, of knowing, but you can't define that in terms of the five khandhas. And I feel that dialogue between the Buddha and Vacchagotta is a very, very, very clear, probably the clearest expression of that. The awake, aware mind is completely liberated from the five khandhas. It's not attached to the body, to time, to location, to identity, anything. But it's totally present and completely attuned to the five khandhas without being identified with them. So when we talk about the Buddha's conduct, we say he was perfectly mindful. Every word he spoke was perfectly in accord with time, the place, the situation. Every word he spoke was true. What he said and what he did was always attuned to being of benefit to other beings. his whole lifetime from the enlightenment to the parinibbana. So that detachment didn't result in kind of being spaced out, or like, I'm not going to bother with these grubby humans, the world. I've had it with the world, I'm beyond the world. Not at all. That there was a complete transcendence of the world, but a perfect attunement to the world. So in the experience that you're describing, it's both there is that, oh, that's not me, wow, but still the hand kind of knows what to do, and you still follow the routine, and there's a sense of relating to the people you're with and looking after your physical form and functioning in harmony with the world. And I feel that the Buddha principle is exactly the kind of embodiment of that, both completely in tune with the world, but totally transcending the world at the same time. So that little experience with your toothbrush and the mirror, there's a lot there. There's a lot there that's very significant. Also, you don't even need a mirror. A very interesting kind of meditation practice is to let the mind be as quiet as possible, and then just to say your own name to yourself internally. No story. Just think your name. Just let everything be as quiet as possible, and just think your own name. And in a very similar way, there's that kind of wholesome weirdness, like, because your citta knows, what the heck does that refer to? What is the referent? That word, English word. What is that word that's so familiar to me? Even got it written on you. That what is this here that word is referring to? Oh, so it's weird, but it's a good weird. I recommend that as a practice.